Something deeply supernatural has happened in Minnesota, and it cannot be properly understood if we look at it only through politics or media narratives. What we are seeing right now is not merely unrest in the streets or disagreement about public policy. Scripture teaches us that when a society rejects God's authority and elevates false spiritual claims in places of influence, the consequences do not remain theoretical. They surface in people's behavior, in lawlessness, confusion, and disorder. That is the framework we must use to understand what is unfolding in Minnesota right now. Hello, everyone. I'm James Lasher with Charisma Media. Over recent weeks, Minnesota has experienced escalating disorder and chaos following the fatal shootings of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy, which ignited large demonstrations. These protests have repeatedly defied efforts at restoring law and order, with large crowds blocking streets, engaging federal agents, and clashing with local authorities. Scripture teaches that when restraint collapses among a people, it is often a symptom of a much deeper spiritual condition. That takes us to what the Bible repeatedly calls the high places. In the Old Testament, high places were elevated sites where false gods were worshipped. These were not neutral cultural expressions. They were centers of spiritual allegiance, places that shaped the spiritual condition of the land and the people who lived under them. God's commandments about high places were direct. In the book of Deuteronomy, he instructed Israel to destroy the altars of false gods completely when entering the promised land. There was no call to tolerate, balance, or manage them. The command was to remove them. That order was acted upon by key biblical leaders. Gideon was instructed by God to tear down his father's altar to Baal before Israel could be delivered from oppression. King Hezekiah removed high places and destroyed objects of idolatry as part of a national reform. Scripture records that spiritual renewal and order followed. King Josiah went further still, defiling the high places and eliminating centers of false worship throughout Judah. His actions brought a season of restored covenant faithfulness. These leaders understood a principle that Scripture clearly teaches us, that spiritual authority precedes social outcomes. You cannot protect false worship in high places and expect order to prevail among the people. This teaching continues in the New Testament. The Apostle Paul explains that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, rulers of the darkness of this age, and spiritual wickedness in high places. So what exactly are principalities in biblical terms? Principalities are not human governments or elected officials. Paul explicitly states that our struggle is not against people, but against spiritual forces organized against God's authority. These are high-ranking satanic beings and powers operating in the spiritual realm, seeking to influence regions, cultures, and systems that have opened themselves up to demonic forces. These principalities are not abstract ideas. They are described as spiritual powers with influence, and they operate through deception, disorder, and rebellion against righteousness. Now, with that biblical foundation, we can now turn to the Minnesota State Capitol. During the Christmas season of 2024, a satanic display was permitted inside the Capitol. It included occult symbolism, a poor quality phoenix statue, and messaging that rejected God's authority, including a declaration saying, "You are your own God," an explicit denial of God's sovereignty. But what happened after that removed all remaining doubt about the spiritual nature of what is unfolding. A second satanic display was registered and approved for a limited period inside the Capitol in April 2025. This display included a plaque with the explicit wording, and I quote, "The Democratic Coalition of Satan Worshippers thanks Governor Tim Walz for not standing in the way of spreading Satanism in the state Capitol building. Satan has a special place for you." That message is stunning to read. It was not hyperbole. It was a real approved display inside the seat of authority in Minnesota. Before we go further, I want you to see this directly. Here is Minnesota State Representative Pam Altendorf standing inside the Capitol and documenting the plaque exactly as it appeared.
This is Representative Pam Altendorf coming live at you from the Minnesota State Capitol. I am on the ground floor, and as I was leaving my committee meeting today here earlier, I noticed that there is a new display here at the State Capitol, and it's for Governor Walz. It's right here on display. So let me see. I mean, I guess I can't flip my phone, but I'll see if I can show it to you. This is what we have here, everyone. Let me read it to you. The Democratic Coalition of Satan Worshippers thanks Governor Tim Walz for not standing in the way of spreading Satanism in the state Capitol building. Satan has a special place for you. That's right, everyone. So the Democratic Coalition of Satan Worshippers, they have given some sort of plaque here to Governor Tim Walz. So let me be the first, I guess, to congratulate Governor Tim Walz for this very special award that has come from the Satan Worshippers here in the Minnesota State Capitol. Yes, everyone, this is true. I am live, not making this up. You can't make this up. I don't know what else to say. I would think if you're Governor Tim Walz, you could choose not to have up this plaque. I don't know why a governor of a state would want this plaque, but there it is. Let me show you. Here we are live at the state capitol, and the Satan Worshippers have thanked Governor Tim Walz. And let me repeat this. The last line says, "Satan has a special place for you." I'm speechless.
What you just saw represents something far more serious than political debate. It represents demonic allegiance in a seat of public authority in a high place. It established a satanic stronghold inside the state of Minnesota that is ruled over by a principality. Scripture shows us that authority is not evaluated solely by stated intent. It is evaluated by what is permitted to stand in places of influence. When false worship is allowed to occupy high places, spiritual access is granted. Whether Governor Tim Walz personally endorses that message is irrelevant from the biblical standpoint. What matters is that it was permitted, protected, and sanctioned in the capital, giving spiritual access to forces that oppose God. When such spiritual access is granted, principalities will respond. Scripture warns that when false gods are elevated, disorder follows. People become unrestrained. Lawlessness spreads. Confusion replaces coherence. Obedience to authority breaks down, not because of any single policy or event, but because the spiritual fabric of society has been undermined. This explains the disorder we are now seeing in Minnesota, the resistance to law enforcement, the defiance of attempted order, and the increasing breakdown of social restraint. These protests are not random. They are not spontaneous. They are planned and organized. They are symptoms of spiritual misalignment. It is worth noting, however, that similar displays in other states have provoked intense reactions as well. In December 2023, a Navy veteran named Michael Cassidy dismantled and decapitated a Satanic temple statue displayed in the Iowa State Capitol. Cassidy later described his action as a form of Christian civil disobedience in response to what he considered a blasphemous exhibit. What is unfolding in Minnesota is not simply political disagreement or cultural tension. It reflects spiritual negligence and warfare at the highest level of authority. The Bible records that whenever high places are allowed to stand unchecked, disorder followed among the people. When those high places were torn down, restoration followed. At this point, Governor Tim Walz has ceded spiritual authority over Minnesota to the principalities now ruling in those high places. Minnesota stands at a pivotal moment where spiritual authority and cultural reality intersect. The Bible is clear. Spiritual authority shapes cultural outcomes. This is not partisan language. It is not ideological rhetoric. It is a biblical warning, and it should not be ignored. Minnesota is being shown in real time what happens when high places are left standing. I'm James Lasher with Charisma Media, and my new book, The Revelation of Jesus, is now available on Amazon.com. It's a clear, easy-to-read commentary on the book of Revelation written for anyone who wants to understand what Scripture actually says about the times we're living in without confusion or hype. Make sure to hit the like button and share this video with everyone you know. God bless you.